Namaste. John F. Kennedy once said, the Chinese use two brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger, the other one for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. In a crisis situation, there are things which are not within our control, and there are things which are dependent on us. One cannot control the actions of others. One cannot predict what lies ahead. One cannot control other people's motives. One cannot control how long the crisis would end, how others would react to a situation. However, you can control your positive attitude. You can also control how you use the social media and the news portal in order to be informed. You can also control how you react to certain situations and how you utilize your time. You can control your kindness and grace. In the context of education, there are challenges to initiate online education. We achieved some success to connect with our students. The challenges have been explored, and slowly but steadily, we are finding solutions to them. So today's webinar is dedicated for instructional design in online education. The keynote speaker today for this webinar is Dr. Lai Jiang. Dr. Lai Jiang is a researcher and an educational consultant. She has delivered trainings and advised educational organizations and policymakers in more than 13 countries in Asia, South America, and Europe. The training topics are varied and ranges from student assessment, thesis supervision, course planning, curriculum development for both face-to-face as well as for distance learning. She is currently working at KU Leuven, Belgium. Her expertise and special interest is on how to design technology-supported courses, programs that stimulates the students' critical thinking as well as self-learning abilities. Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Lai Jiang, to share her expertise on instructional design in online education. Over to you, Dr. Lai.
Yeah, thank you, Jasna, for your introduction. I'm very happy that I have the chance today being with all of you and to share some important messages with you all. It's really my pleasure to talk to you, and during the session, I'm happy to answer any questions from you. So I will first share my screen. Yes, you can see my screen? Yeah, good. Okay, so maybe I would first start with explain you very briefly why we need instruction. Maybe even earlier, I should first explain what is instruction design. Basically, this is a study field. So in this field, it contains principles or theoretical framework or assumption or strategies that help all the educators to design effective and efficient instruction so that students can learn well and effectively achieve the learning goal. Why instruction design is important? For the ones who follow education training process, they see that because the instruction design is very much based on cognitive psychology, it studies how our human brain process and recognize information. So if you know those principles well from the instruction design, then it's much more likely you can be a successful teacher and help students to learn better. Why for e-learning, this is also important. E-learning actually is a part of a whole teaching practice. So no matter you do it online or face-to-face, how our brain process information remain the same. Using e-learning or technology supported teaching methods, you can use various tools to make things even better. But on the other hand, if you don't know very well what are the key principles, sometimes you may spend time on not important things. You may use a lot of color or use different kind of visual support, not to help students process information, but rather confuse them. So it's quite important when we work online or use different kind of tools to design your online course, we need to know what are the important elements and how to use the tool for a useful product. So in this seminar, this webinar, I will mainly focus on 4 design principles. I will start with the first one, activating prior knowledge. What is prior knowledge? Prior knowledge basically refers to what you already know. For instance, now I'm talking about the instruction design and explain to you what it is. Automatically, you will think about relevant information and to see what kind of experience or principles in the past you have worked, which worked, or what kind of things, scenarios you immediately recall which doesn't work. So this is the way to immediately connect what I am going to say and help you to interpret the information I'm giving here. Prior knowledge in cognitive psychology studies have a very strong impact on how people interpret information, how do they make connection between the pieces of information, how do they make connections, and eventually interpret the information and make sense of it. In order to illustrate it, I'm now giving you this text. You can take 1 minute or 30 seconds to read it through. And in the chat, you can type, how do you find it? You immediately know what it is? If you know, you can type in the chat, or you can tell it's really difficult to figure out what it is. Okay, I keep silent and you can read. Then afterwards, I welcome you to type in your chat to tell your feeling. Okay, some people saying yes, I'm a bit lost. I have no idea what it is. Some people saying, yeah, I'm constructing my knowledge. Okay, what others think about? How do you feel? Do you have an idea what this paragraph is about? It's not surprising at all that you find it's difficult to figure out what it is. Now I'm going to help you by activating your prior knowledge. I will tell you, I will give you 6 words on the slides. Okay. Now, you know, I give you the topic. It's about washing clothes. If you scan the text again, does all the sentence now suddenly make sense to you? So that's the power of prior knowledge. When you know what it is about, immediately you know which relevant piece of information that's or knowledge or experience you know, so that you can immediately put the new information in a context, then can make sense of it easily. So therefore, in our teaching and learning process, it's quite important always indicate what topic it is and activate what students already know, their prior knowledge, which can help teaching and learning. Then the question is, how can we do it online to activate students' prior knowledge? Nowadays, online, I think one of the common practice you might do often is offer students some studying material before you're meeting them online. You ask them to watch a video, to read a book, to study some handouts or study a website or whatever study material. In order at this moment to activate their prior knowledge, one thing you can do is to add pre-questions along with those studying material so that students can think, oh, this is the topic. What kind of knowledge I already know about it? What do I think about this topic? What my prior experience of it? So you can use those questions to stimulate them to think about. Then after they're reading the new information, one way to stimulate and encourage them to compare the difference between what they know before and what they know now is to ask some post questions. It can be in a quiz form or a kind of open question, what you have learned, or what kind of things you notice which is differ from what you originally know, so that they can see the misconception or some knowledge gap. This is also another way to motivate them to learn. And to further help students to do those kind of mental exercise, to compare the old information and the new information, is you can let students or learners make inventory. You can ask them to make a mind map. For instance, you give them a chapter and ask them to create a mind map to see how different new concepts are connected to each other, or write a blog to summarize the chapter you give to them, or make a post to have a discussion with the students. And in order to do those things, the main focus is to ask them to determine what are the parts they find most difficult and confusing, so that they already draw their attention to the most difficult part for their own studying. Then you may organize like a Zoom classroom with your students. To activate student prior knowledge, you can also use Mentimeter or Kahoot or Socratic or Google Form. So basically, in our session, I will also try one of them. Then you can see that it's online questioning. You ask students a question, student can answer it, and immediately everybody will see everybody's answer. So this is another way of activating students' prior knowledge. A fourth way is you, at the beginning of the course, like last week, one of the teacher gave an experience saying at the beginning of the course, you can give students a video to tell a concrete story, or a podcast, just a voice, or you show a kind of picture or virtual image that you can tell a certain story to draw people's attention and activate what they have known. Finally, you can also choose to have a visual overview of the subject matter, so people already see, this is the whole framework and I already know this piece, but those and those I don't know anything about. So in that way, they can prepare their mind to have a structure to host all the new information which he or she will receive. Okay, that's the first principle. Now I move to the second one, which is giving clear, structured, and challenging instruction. How to do it? For instance, this is a Moodle learning environment. I know that some of you use a different learning management system. It doesn't matter. The main message here is all the information you provided in your course online need to be very well structured. Students need to know when to do what and what is the expectation. For instance, this is a kind of, a course where you see students immediately, okay, this is the structure, module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's an overview, There is an introduction for students to get familiar with the environment. And for each step, they will see particular instruction and information of that module. So the online environment very well structure the course so that students has less chance to get lost and confused. Then how to provide a clear, structured, and challenging instruction. So let's zoom in more closely, for instance, to one of the lessons you gave. In the lesson, normally you first give instruction, and those instructions not only about what you are going to talk, the topic, but you also explain a little bit why this topic is important for students. You can tell in the form of a story or an image or something, or use a question to trigger students, to draw their attention. Then you demonstrate the new topic, you explain. Then when you introduce a new concept, you give example, not only those that illustrate the concept, but also the wrong example, so that people see that the key elements of the concept. Then afterwards, explanation, you immediately ask students to apply what they have learned. And more important is to focus on the integration of what they have known and what they just learned. So to integrate. Last but not least is you ask yourself, wrap up, to give students feedback on their performance, or you ask students to self-summarize what they have learned. So basically, in order to have a clear, structured, and challenging instruction, these are the specific tips I would give to you. So, which are direct attention to students' attention to most relevant information that you do in instruction and demonstration. And the assignment also helps. You give examples and non-examples to illustrate a concept. You use media that's relevant to enhance learning. Sometimes it's a picture, sometimes it's a video. It depends on the content. You also ask students really to relate the new information with the old, what they have already known. But the last but not least is really give plenty of time, a chance, let students apply and integrate what they know. So these are the key elements of a successful instruction. So it's really focused on the problem. In our medical context, is always linked to their future practice. As a doctor, what they need to do, and you activate their prior knowledge, you demonstrate, illustrate how to deal with certain case, and you give them chance to apply and integrate. For the last point, I will go back and emphasize in the last point. So the third design principle is to activate students. When I'm talking about activating learning, then I move from a teacher perspective to a student's perspective. The first two principles is all about what you as a teacher need to do. But here I want you to pay attention to what students need to do in learning. So we want them to engage in the learning process. Engage means they have demonstrate a certain learning behavior, such as they read a book, they write a report, or study a medical patient medical history, or they do a project to test a certain treatment, whether it's what could be the good recommendation based on the literature. The engagement also refers to the mental activities they do while doing all the reading, writing, and doing projects, for instance. So they have to interpret the information, analyze it, make inference, explain to others what they understand, and reflect on their decision. For instance, as a doctor, I think it's super important, the reflection aspect. They need to aware certain decision, what's the assumption they have made, what's the possible alternative solution. Maybe not only one treatment is possible, but there's several ones. What are the advantage and disadvantage? And if they choose one of them, what's the implication for the patient or for the situation? So all this is about the critical thinking aspect. That's what we want them to achieve. And I just explained what is active learning, and maybe now you can scan this QR code in the chat. The hosts will also post the link. Then you can go directly to the website and input your thought. What do you think about active learning? Is it something you would like to do, and why so? You can write your response. And I'm using Pool Everywhere. It's like the same as Kahoot or Mentimeter. The advantage of this online tool is once you write your answer, immediately I can show in the slides. And the input will change according to the answers. So all these are the answers have been given to this question, and it's constantly changing because you are putting new answers. And the most recent, the big one is the most recent answer that's from you. And I find it's a nice tool maybe to activate students, because then you know they are with you. Yeah, another input. Very nice. Yeah. And of course, depends on the layout you choose. Here, I choose the most recent answer in a big letter. You can also choose another layout in a different way. For instance, I can do like this, then it's also will change. So it will also change differently. Okay. So basically, when you see all the answers that from different people, we see that to activate students, there's a lot of benefit. Here listed is only 4 big categories, which is deepen their thinking, engaging better learning behavior or modifying their learning behavior. And then there's also aspects about when they are engaged, they are more likely to collaborate with others. A third one is maybe, I didn't see people mention it, but actually it's also there, is students will really, when they really activate it, they will willing to take initiative even outside of your class to continue studying and learning. Then the question is how we can stimulate active learning if we see the benefit. There's different way to do it. So when students alone, study alone, you can use questions, you can ask them to produce a mind map or produce a blog or make a summary. So various small tasks that student can do it alone. Of course, you can also have interaction with students by asking them open questions, asking them critical questions to stimulate them to think further. Another way is putting them in a small group, because when they hear different answers or different point of view, they may more likely to rethink what they, to reflect on their initial thoughts. Another way is putting them in the society to take some action, like internship or those kind of activities, those activating methods. So here is another barcode. Here I used a tool called Padlet, where you can see that there's already some answers given on how to activate students for individual studying or online in the class with you, or to work with other students in a group, or outside of the classroom, what kind of activity you can organize to activate them. You can go to Padlet, this when you scan it. Meanwhile, I will also go to that website so that you can see. You see that there's an arrow. If you click on this plus, then you can type the things. If you say, no, I don't want it, then you can delete it. You see? So for each area, individual studying with you, online interaction, or with students in a group study, or outside of the class, there people have already given some ideas. If you have other ideas, you are welcome to click on the plus and to type your input. And all your inputs will be immediately saved and be displayed to other people who can have the access. And it's anonymous way of sharing your input and thoughts. You can pull the line here. Okay, you see, there's a new input, Jamboard with stick notes. Yes, that's one of the Google tools that's very easy to use. You can use it. So that's in the online lessons, you can immediately interact with your students. Yes, a good idea. Okay, so after the session, if you want, you can read through all the ideas from others. Maybe it will give you some inspirations. Okay, I go back to my slides. On my slides, I also want to summarize a few interesting methods, and together with different kinds of tools you can use. For instance, if you want to activate the students, you want to focus on the mental activity, for instance, you want them to elaborate the information you gave to them, then questioning is a good method. Questioning, one way you can do it ask them to write a web blog. Yeah? So for instance, if they read a chapter, then you can say the instruction is, now you have to think about a number of questions while reading. Write down the first chunk of a few questions that you have got answered after finish reading, and also write down the question that you cannot, still remain unclear or wandering around after reading. So this can be one way. Peerwise is a very interesting website. Later after the session, you can check it out. So basically, it's a free tool. Encourage all the students to design their own question, and by giving the question, they also need to give answer. So it's multiple choice question database, basically. Student can create such database, and when other students come to that database, they can say, okay, now I'm going to choose on topic, for instance, specific topic, then they can choose what kind of good question I want to test, then they can practice themselves. And because when students input their question, they also need to input the option answer and also the feedback. In this way, actually, it's a learning process for themselves. They need to know very well the contents that they create a question about. And question mark is another tool, is also purely to make question, and flashcard is another tool. So one side can be a question and the other side is the answer. So if they have to memorize something, this is a very practical electronic tool for students to do. So I think Josna will share this slide. So all the links in this slide later you can check out. Most of them are free tools. Some of them, yeah, not. The second strategy is you ask them to self-explain. In a medical situation, I think it's very important to emphasize the thinking process. When you see a certain disease, in order to have a conclusion of what problem it is, the thinking process is very important. We have to try to let students be explicit about it. So, for instance, you can ask them to create a video or podcast just to explain how they deal with this case, what information they have at hand, what kind of information is based on their assumption, what kind of information they actually missing, and with this giving situation, how they come to the final conclusion. So you can ask them to make a record of their thinking process, basically is thinking aloud. Then they can post it on the forum or send to each other and give comments to each other. The third one is summarizing. For instance, you can ask students to write a tweet. If writing tweet, it means it need to be really concise. There's a words limit. Or you can just free writing. You ask them to write in a Word document and then post it online so that they can give feedback to each other. If you have 200 students or 400 students, actually you don't necessarily, you have to check everybody's answer. You can make pairs or make a 3 group people so everyone can get at least 2 feedbacks from each other. That's also an activating way to do it. Another way is mapping. I have mentioned it before. You can ask a student to make a mind map and then also share with others and to compare. It will be interesting for students to do so because then they will realize knowledge actually is not an object. It depends on how you see things, depends on which perspective you take. The same information, you may create a different mind map. That will be interesting to discuss with students also. And then the next 3 strategy is peer teaching. We always say the best way of learning is to teach someone, because then you have to make efforts, really think it through about the thing. The last one, self-testing, peer-wise, or you create all kinds of quiz and also encourage students to learn together as a group, to get feedback, not only from you, but from the peer and from themselves. So self-assessment is also important. And then I also list many free tools for either collaborative learning or for peer assessment or for creating your interactive presentation. I think after session, you are free, you are welcome to look at them. The last design principle I want to emphasize is to integrate assessment into your teaching. Assessment here, please don't think about the final examination. When I use the word assessment, I really refers to all type of feedback moment or the moments you can monitoring students' learning process. Students can self-monitoring their learning process or others' learning process. It's the moment to give feedback to their own themselves. So if imagine this line is your course, assessment is no longer only happens at the end. The assessment should have different forms as a self-assessment, as a peer assessment, as a quiz, as assignments, as a project, as a observation. So in all kinds of form and appear along the whole learning process, the whole process of your course. And the third element I want to emphasize is assessment here. I think to study in the medical domain, it's really a complex learning. And from instructional design field, it has been proven that for a complex learning, providing students sufficient, plenty of opportunity to integrate and coordinate, learn the knowledge, skill, and attitude is super, super important. How to do it? For instance, in the first few exercises, you focus on 1 or 2 elements. Then in the later, getting more because they know and more topic. And so you integrate in your assessment already what they learn, so they have chance while doing this assessment task, they are already practicing the integration. Then eventually it's possible, as the colorful circle, then it's possible at the end, they can diagnose patient, they can give appropriate treatment. And another example is, imagine this is your online lesson. Normally a lesson, no matter it's giving online or face-to-face, you always have an introduction part, you have the main body part, you have the conclusion part. To integrate assessment, it means at the very beginning, you can have a kind of quiz or a Mentimeter, like what we just did, those kind of little questions to check students' prior knowledge, their pre-perception or beliefs, and immediately give a kind of feedback by giving a story or a shocking exercise, so they are aware, oh, there's something I don't know, oh, there's something I remembered wrong, or I have a wrong impression, or so people immediately activate their prior knowledge. During the session, you can constantly checking how well they know the accuracy of their prior knowledge, and how do they process the new information, and you give feedback and you give remedy. The last at end, to assess students, you can also ask them to summarize and review what they have learned. And there's a various tools and techniques you can do it, so that it's not always quiz from the beginning to the end. You can vary it. In this way, students also can be more likely to focus on your session. Because of the time, I cannot go through all of them in detail, but I think you all are very experienced teacher. Probably you can think of various forms immediately. So at the, I didn't check my time. At the end, I would like to invite all of you have a small reflection on your mind. What one thinks after you listen to this session, you will keep on doing. You are already doing very well. What things you will try to avoid it or remove it? What things you can start to do? Okay, thank you very much. I will give back the floor to Josna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lai, for highlighting the instructional design, engaging the students, and integrating the assessment in the teaching learning activities. I'm sure the keynote speech was very useful for all of us who are trying to struggle with designing this virtual learning platforms now. Now we have a good practice sharing. We will take questions towards the end. Now we would have Dr. Ashish Shrestha. He would be highlighting on his experience on self-study assignment. He is a professor at BP Kerala Institute of Health Sciences from Department of Public Health Dentistry. So Dr. Ashish, the floor is yours now.
Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me. Good evening, dear colleagues, seniors, friends. It is good to be sharing this platform with all of you. This is a good learning experience in this form, and I want to thank the Department of Health Professionals Education for providing this platform. I would also like to thank Dr. Lai Jiang for her exceptional presentation in instructional design in online education. So going on with what I have to say, I professionally feel there is no one way that I will suffice as a teacher. You have to assess the students and then think about how you can engage them. One of the ways I do it is very plainly the modified classroom technique. So there are many ways, and I just want to speak about this technique. In the first session, I am the facilitator. I facilitate the topic till them towards learning the point. I say something about the topic and advise the need to know things and deliver. Then in half an hour or 30 or 40 minutes, I would have done it. Then the remaining time I take to give the instructions to the students. I would explain the things that they are supposed to gain, firstly by giving the learning objectives. Based on the exercises are planned, and the planning begins now. The presentations are being made by the students in the next session. So the students have the chance to make the presentations, and I divide the students accordingly. If I have 40 students, I divide into 4 groups and so on. So I firstly give the exercise to the group. That's the first thing I make. And I assign the postgraduate students in my department as moderators. So they will even get a chance to enhance their teaching skills as it is part of their training. The second thing, I make each group as equal work as the others. And the third thing is give them time for the session for them to present. So the next session or the one that is next to it could be their presentation times. And fourth is the feedback. They will receive feedback from their listeners or their colleagues as well as from the moderators. So I have been doing this and have received a good feedback. It enhances their working skills and lets them think and find ways of easy retention as they can also present. You have to stress on everyone to present, as this is a large group. So if one group presents now, the next group would present the next, and the presenter would change in the group. The students like this type of presentation. It makes them work and keep them going. So I make it compulsory that they change the presenters each time, and the groups take turn to answer each question. So everyone in the group gets to participate, and there might be little prejudice as the participation, but one group or every group member tackles it as they all get to present during each time. It is always good to put a reward at the end. That would be the reward to the best presentation. It could be at the end of the semester also. So I would collect all the presentations, go over it, and announce at the end. And I think that is enough to get them going on their feet. Now it comes on to the online part. That was when the online had not taken place. But in the online, is it valid, or will it still work if it is made online? Well, the answer is yes, because it only comes into being practiced. So first session could be taken by you like an orientation session, and divide the group as you would. Then the presentations would be made by the group. They will present, and you can be the moderator for each activity, or you can assign even the junior residents as moderators for their activity. I have done this, and it does give a wonderful feedback. The students have also expressed that there is learning from this. So this is how you can teach a large group in a way. This is done this is a way in which you can practice, but it's only one way. I'm not saying that you should do it, but it's one of the ways in which you can practice. So that is all I have to share. Thank you all for listening and giving me the opportunity to share this experience. And I hope you can keep this practice in your own environment, and let's see how it turns out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish, for sharing your experience. Now we have another good practice sharing by Professor Hani Wahid. He is the director of the online presence at ASU MENA FAMER, AIN Shams University, Egypt. Please help me welcome Dr. Hani to share his good practice on technology enhanced learning. Over to you, Dr. Hani.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind invitation. I will speak of technology enhanced learning in anatomy flipped classrooms. First, I will share my screen.
Dr. Hani, we can see your presentation, but we are unable to hear you.
Yes. 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 This is the title of my presentation is the use of technology enhanced learning in anatomy flipped learning classrooms. This is my project in FAMER. The objectives of the presentation: first, to discuss the background and the added value of the use of flipped classrooms in teaching in general. Second, to describe the steps and the activities performed in another. Third, to clarify the limitations, really to summarize steps for a successful online learning. The technology enhanced learning, as a criteria, it should support the learning experience and integrate it into the educational process to achieve the learning aims and outcomes. It should be integrated rather than to support. And with digitization formation, the flipped classrooms become a well-known instructional design to raise the learner's communication and the interactions. The idea in flipped classrooms, it reverses or flip the traditional classes. So it invert is done during classroom with a facilitator rather than the teacher, and the low level of knowledge like understanding and recording are performed in pre-class activities. The added value for the flipped classrooms in general, flipped classrooms enhance decision-making, communication, self-directed learning, and the critical thinking for the students. This to move more towards the student-centered learning. Anatomy flipped classrooms, and this could be applied to any subject and to any context, passes through 3 stages. First, pre-class activities. Second, in-class activities. And third, after-class activities. In pre-class activities, 2 procedures are performed. First, to prepare the materials needed for the flipped lectures, flipped anatomy lectures. And this is the learning resources for the students. And this could be prepared using many technical softwares like Office 365, Office Mix. Also in anatomy, we could use some virtual softwares like Visible Body or Complete Anatomy. And also at Ain Shams University, there is a device called Anatomage version 6. This is some sort of the virtual reality used to construct 3D diagrams and 3D models for anatomy teaching. So first, we prepare the materials. Other use softwares in this step, we could use many softwares to perform 3D graphical animations like XPLE, Animoto. Also, we could use Filmora and other softwares to prepare the materials in the form of recorded videos or interactive quizzes or whatever we like. Second step in pre-class activities is to upload these materials on a learning management system. And their links are conducted conducted to the students. For example, we use in Ain Shams University, use the Google Classrooms and also Microsoft Teams, East North Africa FAMR. This is the link to my project, Anatomy Flipped Learning project, and this is the barcode for the recorded and uploaded videos on our YouTube channel. At this level, students will receive the materials and learn by themselves. This is called asynchronous learning. Students learn at their own pace. Here, this is the link to Ain Shams Middle East North Africa FAMR Health Profession Education channel on the YouTube. Second, in the in-class activities, the traditional model of teaching changed into the flipped model. The professor or the teacher become a facilitator in between the groups of students. We could do or perform many activities. For example, case scenarios for the students, also small group discussions within the lectures. We could make polls, interactive polls, using softwares like Socrative or Poll Everywhere software. Here for an example for a link for the Poll Everywhere software and the barcode for this software. This is stage of synchronous learning. Students learn by interaction with their professors. Nowadays, we could use other softwares to overcome this pandemic era and replace face-to-face. We could use Microsoft Teams, Zoom with breakout rooms, WebEx, also big blue buttons. We could use these softwares to overcome the problem of face-to-face learning. After class activities, at this stage, we conduct interviews, focus group discussions, also surveys like SurveyMonkey questionnaire, and we could measure student satisfaction. Also, we could perform formative assessments like Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, and also formative quizzes like Moodle Learning Management Systems, and we could also use portfolio for the reflection. This is the stage of reflections, responses, and assignments. Here, the link to one of my surveys, SurveyMonkey analysis about the student satisfaction. Limitations in the use of technology enhanced learning comes from first evaluation of the project, evaluation of this instructional design. Kirkpatrick's four-stage model responses the effectiveness of education or training at four levels. First, level of reaction or satisfaction. Second, level of learning or results of students. Third, behavior. And fourth, the results. So the reactions alone, reactions data, satisfaction alone have limited value in demonstrating enhancement. Second, transforming the learning experience. To what extent did the technology enhanced learning changes the syllabus and the learning design rather than the application of technology as such? It should be implemented within curriculum. My last slide, 6 steps for a successful online learning. We should do these 6 steps. First, to use latest technology in our learning. Second, having a passionate course instructor and support team. We should work in teams and all the team members should have a passion about this instructional design. Second, updated relevant course content. We should update our specific objectives all the time. Fourth, create a community of practice. This is very important, the interaction between the students and the professors. We should create a community of practice. Fifth, share and discussion and make interactive. The interactivity and the peer teaching is very important in this model. Sixth step, the blended study options, offering the best of both worlds, using both online learning and regular on-campus classes at set intervals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hani. We learned many things on technology enhanced learning. I really liked one of the tips, which is the community of practice. Community of practice is something which we are exploring now. We are seeing how institutes are exploring on different online education and what could be feasible in our setup and what are good practices which have shown success in the similar work setup institutes. maybe blended learning would be the future for us post-COVID. So thank you very much. Now I open the floor for question and answer. You may ask question to the keynote speaker or the speakers who shared their good practices. Here in the Q&A section, I see two questions. One is by Durga Mishra. What are the online methods to transfer skills in medical education? This is something we have been struggling. Yes, how are skills taught or assessed through online platforms? Dr. Lai, would you like to respond to it?
Yes.
This question is for me or Dr. Olai?
This is open question. Any of you may respond to it.
Okay, I will first have a look again, the question. Can you repeat it again?
What are the different online methods for transfer of skills in medical education?
Yeah, okay. If I'm thinking, train students specific medical skills online, then immediately I can think of one example that I have pop up in my mind. Ask me to start my video. Okay. Yes. Sorry. You can use video. Video is one possible way to train specific practical skills. So one of the case I learned from the course, which is helping bandage. So for students, how to do the bandage correct. So for the emergency treatment. So in the video, you can show correct way of band in a slow motion. And then you can ask students to take a video at home with their cell phone, fix it somewhere, and they have to do it, and they have to submit what they do. So this is one way online you can still train very practical skills. And the other thing video can do is nowadays online, in the slides I didn't show this too, but it's possible, is that you create a video, and during the video you can insert question or insert highlighting. You can draw a circle on the area you want students to pay attention to, and you can at that moment also insert a question, so you can create an interactive video. In that way, it's also, I can also imagine it's very practical when you train actions. So I don't know whether my answer can answer your question.
Thank you, Dr. Lai. Yes, definitely video can really help to enhance the skill. I would also like to request Dr. Hani if there is already a practice of skill enhancement through online platforms at the university in Egypt.
From my point of view, we could transfer all types of skills except for the manual skills. The manual skills, this is some problems and discussions about this. And as Dr. Jiang said, we could use videos. We could also use interactive quizzes. For example, a body and where to auscultate, for example, the mitral valve. And the student could put by interactions about the site and surface anatomy for the auscultation of the mitral valve. If it put in a wrong place, it be mentioned wrong and give him feedback. So we could use to, but still the probe recorded of the student on this high fidelity simulator. And then the recorded video is passed to the professors to be graded about the performance and steps of action.
Thank you, Dr. Hani. Yes, we kind of are struggling with the simulation-based education because we did not have equipped skills lab, so that may be a future for us. But yes, we whatever we have, we can try and exploit and explore further to see how we can enhance skill through online education. And Durga Mishra also puts it as a comment there. Is artificial intelligence going to replace the hands-on experience of our teaching learning activities? Is it going to replace artificial intelligence? Is it going to replace the skill enhancement for us?
Personally, I would think it will have added value rather than completely replace. The artificial intelligence is particularly interesting if the training skill is highly, how to say, sensitive or dangerous situation. For instance, you normally don't dare let students who don't have much experience already doing operational exercise on real patient. You will never do that. But if you have the artificial intelligence, the virtual reality, you can ask them already practice all those skills in the early study stage, because the software will be very sensitive in feeling how deep they cut, or then the simulation will give the patient is bleeding, the patient is going to die. So it's like a fly simulation. So it will give very real, immediately response to the student, the feedback to student. And I would think this will be really an advantage. For now, in every medical school, we have some simulation, but it's not widely used. But if in the future, artificial intelligence is really widely used, I would think it will be really a plus for our training.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, but I would like to open the Q&A in the form of just asking. So if anybody is raising their hand, the moderators and the hall hosts, please co-hosts, please let us know. It could be queries, it could be comments, it could be feedback or anything. One or two we can have. We request the participants to share their views or queries with the panelists. Do we have anybody?
Maybe while participants are thinking about their question, I have one practical comment. It's also stimulated the artificial intelligence question, stimulated me to think about it. So if imagine one day our computer technology tools are so advanced, there's always a question whether teacher will be needed. And I think one thing for computer or machine can never really replace is the human interact, is the emotion. For online course, for online learning in studies, in the field of instruction design, they're also very much emphasize that don't forget the human interaction. We emphasize a lot on the cognitive process, but the emotional aspects we should not forget. So whenever you design your course, thinking about how to stimulate students' interest, how to letting them feel being a part of something, the attachment to the group, letting them feel they are constantly cared. When they have problem, there enough sympathy are giving all those aspects we also should not completely forget them, because this is also part of being successful learning, online or face-to-face, it's the same.
Thank you, Lai. Now we have Professor Madhav Lamsal. He's the head of the Department of Biochemistry at PP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences. So he would like to put up a question there.
Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lai, thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to know, since learning is individualized and it occurs at a very individualized pace, how can you do the quality control? Because you are putting the questions at the same time. Some are slow learners, some are fast learners, and especially when we talk about the online courses, online learning, those with a passion for the computer learning will be learning better rather than learning the medical sciences. So I see a problem there. You see, medical science is mostly not only the science, it talks about the attitude. Most important is the attitude building, and also it may occur at a slower pace. When we talk about the individualized learning, teaching may be standardized because we talk about the curriculum, we talk about everything which is standardized, but learning is never standardized, it's individualized. So how you go about this individualized characteristic and put them in a single assessing tool? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for this question. Actually, you gave a quite important comment on, I think this is actually in the education field, it's a constant debate. It's talking about standardized learning and personalized learning. This is one thing. And the second question I also heard is about how you train attitude. That's also a very important aspect we can think of. So to your first one, if I understood your question, is how can you take individual difference on our education process? So I would think technology sometimes can contribute, especially for a big group. Imagine in medical situation, at least in KU Leuven, in the first year, we often see situation is one professor facing 400 students and in the lecture room and give a lecture and the students are sitting there. It's extremely hard for the lecturer to know during learning how each individual process information they hear and see. If you do this online, actually, it might be a little bit easy because on the online situation, for instance, if you use Mentimeter or online quiz, everybody will spontaneously type their answer to a certain question, and immediately technology or the algorithm can calculate the answer and show an overview of how many % of students got the right answer, how many % are not. So the teacher immediately get a kind of feedback from the students. Okay, for my group, is this topic I should continue give example, or I can stop and move to the next section. So for me, technology cannot, certainly it's not one fit all. It's not never works, but technology sometimes can help a teacher to monitor students' process more likely, more accurately, more in time, so that the adaptation from the teacher can be more likely to happen. And the other thing is, if you have technology, for instance, you ask a student to make a video of their thinking process. When you talk about attitude, you give a case to students. If in a handwritten exam, you can hardly feel how students think, because they write whatever at the end the conclusion is. But if you say, no, now the exam is no longer writing the final answer, which treatment it is, or you ask them to explain in the video or illustrate why certain choice is made. And you can see from their face, you can see from their explanation, the reasoning. Then maybe in this way, you can capture better how do they see things, what perspective they take, and you can judge more accurately concerning attitude or perspective or professionalism, how well they are to care about others or take the patient-centered point of view. Those things maybe can be better captured. So the technology, in other words, offers more opportunity for monitoring and collecting evidence of learning. That's, for now, it's a very brief answer from me. Maybe it's not completely answer your question. If I missed something, please go ahead, and I'm willing to say more about it or share my thoughts on this. Yes, just now, or you can ask is.
Yes, thank you. I can still see few more questions in the chat, not in the Q&A. So I'm just trying to scroll and see how, okay. The identity is kind of concealed. It says iPhone, but the statement goes like, can we replace the online learning completely? That is with the physical class. We are most probably he or she is talking about the post-COVID time. So the comment also says we are putting feet in both boats. So would it be benefited in a long run? That is what the query is. How do you see the online and the physical classes or physical teaching in the future post-COVID?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion on this question. Personally, I would really like the attitude. Some of the people see it as opportunity because of this crisis. People have to think about how I can do it well online. This, we can see it as opportunity because it opens a different door on how we, so that we can reflect on our taking for granted practice. On the other hand, I'm also a little bit conservative, not as those people say, let's jumping in it, let's try all the things, because I aware all the teachers who teach in the medical domain, they are not only teacher, they are also at the same time doctor. So we only have 24 hours, and organizing online teaching, I know, and it's for sure, at the beginning in the preparation and setting up stage is always taking more time than face-to-face teaching. Because on face-to-face teaching, you can change on the spot. While online, if you set questions, pre-questions, like Mentimeter or something, you have to do it in advance and run it and test it and make sure everything goes well. If something fails, you will bump into some trouble. And you need to have a second backup option. So compared to, in terms of flexibility wise, how easily you can adapt to things, there's some difference. So I'm in the middle position. So therefore my message is always think for yourself, look at your current practice, think observe the problem, and then dig into the problem and try to find the root cause. Then ask a question, can any technology help? If the answer is yes, then choose one and try it and test it. Not go everywhere or fingers and feet. Sometimes I think it's too overwhelming for teacher, and maybe it will also cause stress and actually, yeah, have negative feeling towards it, saying it's overloaded or something. We can do small steps, but more and more towards technology supported learning and teaching. That's my personal opinion on this. I would not say, yeah, I'm the only right direction, but that's my personal perspective. I'm willing to discuss with anyone who has a different point of view.
I'm also looking at the time. Yes, we learned today on how the prior knowledge is so important in the instructional design. It is the basis for the building of the new knowledge. And you also mentioned about how the instructions can be clearly and how it can be structured effectively. And we also saw how the active learning strategies can be developed. And you also talked about how to integrate assessment in our teaching learning activities. And the sharing of the good practices, we learned about how students can be engaged in the learning process, so that retention of the knowledge or the skill gained is for a longer period of time. And we also learned about the flipped classroom, the technology enhanced learning. And many of us are already trying it out, and the good practice sharing has motivated us, boosted us to continue trying out new things in this crisis situation. So with this, I thank all the three speakers. And on 28th of June, we have a webinar on online assessment strategies in education. This would be taken by Dr. Samar, who is the director of MENA FAMER, Egypt. And I welcome all of you to be a part of that webinar. We will be sharing the link soon. And with this, I close this session, and I thank all the speakers and the participants for this amazing session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.